So as we sort through the fallout of the red dribble, which was disappointing to many of us who were hoping this would be the repudiation of the deep state and what I've called the pedocracy, I have some thoughts I'd like to share about my experience leading up to the election and what exactly is the problem. Who's not being reached and why? I recently attended a funeral. I've been out of town. If you smoke, I would get that under control because the end game is not pretty. But my family was all together, and so I've spent a lot of time the past couple weeks talking to people on both sides of the aisle, why they vote, the way they vote, and the things that they think are issues, as well as talking to a lot of people locally here, just trying to get a handle on it all. And there's a couple of ideas that came out, and I'll start with reading to you a post I put up to people in the community where they were talking about, the subject was, why is this area so reliably voting blue? Which, keep in mind, I live in Western Washington. This is as blue as it gets. And so I wrote, I recently attended a family funeral. It wasn't unexpected. And a subject similar to this came up among my politically divided family. What it seems to boil down to is two things: news sources and past voting habits. By listening to someone talk, I could almost hear the NPR voice, or Tucker Carlson, depending on the side taken, right down to the stock phrases and talking points. It was like dueling tape recorders. I mean, who honestly used the word unhinged or our democracy until the media astroturfed it into existence? Other than that, it seems like Pepsi versus Coke, as in we always drank Pepsi and we always will. Trying to explain there is an actual pro-American movement that is actively resisted by the establishment powers on both sides of the aisle, but has American interests first, is beyond the comprehension of TV-watching news believers. There's just too much of an informational gap to cover in the space of one or two conversations. And I almost forgot. Epstein didn't kill himself. So for starters, the biggest thing I did see in why people vote the way they vote or talk about what they talk about is they are simply tape recorders. They are regurgitating their news source, the news talking points, and the exact phrases that they repeat, which shows me they haven't done much independent thinking. This in psychology is called a received opinion. This is why independent media is so important. This is why the collapse of CNN is so important. Getting rid of these corrupted institutions that are simply implanting storylines into people's mind so that they go around their daily life and they are completely under control. Another factor, of course, is history, past voting history. The left-wing voters in my family, it's interesting because they hate the hate crime hoaxes, the Jussie Smollett and all that. They hate defund the police. They don't like seeing government waste and spending. And yet, because their parents were pro-Reagan, they are Democrat. And they're Democrat because the celebrities are and because it's cool to be in Gen X or whatever, late boomers. They're still just voting in opposition to their parents. But again, it's the issue of very low information. And that's kind of the last factor, is the sheer size of the information gap. I could talk to one family member and I could say, hey, what do you think about that giant horse statue in the Denver airport? And they go, oh yeah, and the lizard people that live under the ground there. And they immediately, I know this person will know everything I know. They will be completely informed and up to date on all the relevant conspiracies and all the news and information that runs counter to what the trusted sources are saying. And then there's just people that kind of shrug their shoulders and have no idea. Even saying something as simple as Epstein didn't kill himself, they kind of are like, huh? What are you talking about? They just don't know. Now, the good news is some of those people, those low information people, they sense that something is wrong with the news. And so what they told me is, I just don't watch the news anymore. So getting those people off the board, at least they're not being actively brainwashed. So even at the low information voter level, there's people that realize something is wrong and they're turning off the television. But it also emphasizes another point as independent media or content creators, whatever you want to call it. We are in a ghetto. We are on a reservation. Think if you're managing public perception. You know a certain number of the people are aware of what you're actually doing. The truthers or whatever. People like us that at least have a pretty good idea what's going on. Well, once you've heard the truth, once you realize the wickedness of those who rule over us and that they're trading in blackmail, they know that we're not going to unsee it. So what do? You quarantine us, right? Like a disease. Truth is the virus. They can't cure it. Once you have the truth virus, you've got it for life. But they can slow the spread. We've been locked down. How? Algorithmically. We've been algorithmically locked down. And that's one of the reasons I'm going to kind of maybe try different styles of videos. I've been writing somewhat of a financial-oriented blog locally here, and I'm getting better luck reaching people that way than with the overt political messaging, because you can talk to people about, hey, this is how you can manage your personal finances. Do you see when the news says this and the market does this, how you can actually profit off of that? And all of a sudden, all the cognitive dissonance BS walls come dropping down, and like, that's very interesting. People are more receptive to truth when it doesn't at least immediately upset their political preconceptions and can fatten their pocketbook. So I don't know, I might try that. I don't need to keep preaching to the choir. That goes for the BitChute comment sections. You guys are at least as well informed as I am, if not far more. But you already know what's going on. The difficulty with the red pill, so to speak, is the penetration. It just isn't reaching the world at large. I mean, you would be shocked how many people are still parroting that, well, red voters are just a bunch of country-living hicks, and blue voters are the educated class that appreciate diversity. We're not getting through. YouTube, I see all these tens of thousands of views on all these content creators that are putting out at least pretty reasonably truthful information. And yet it's quarantined. It's not getting out. It's not getting to that general public. You know, let's face it, Tim Pool is enough. As milquetoast as he is. And people are, Tim Pool's a predator, but he's doing good enough. He's at the top of the charts. He's higher than Taylor Swift when he puts out a song that isn't that good. Like, that guy is tearing it up, but he's still quarantined. He's still on the truth, relatively, reservation. What I mean is we're not getting through to the people that we need to be getting through to. And part of it is a lot of people are just tuning politics out. And a lot of the people, they're just so low information and so unmotivated, so apathetic. It just doesn't matter to them. The turnout is still ridiculously low, but I think if people realize, say, the extent of the blackmail regime and the depravity and disgusting levels of abuse, they would be outraged, and we'd have a changing of the guard in the blink of an eye. So what do? Well, a couple of concepts. One is incrementalism, and the other one is effective versus symbolic action. We need to cut out as much of the time wasting as possible and start taking effective action over symbolic action. Scoring those sick burns on Twitter, it's not changing anybody's mind, and it's not reaching anybody outside of the political cage match that's just there for the entertainment of the very online. So you, me, all of us need to stop focusing on that and start working on pushing that message out, finding ways to get things through, even if it's not directly political. If you can get people thinking using economic sense, they'll start seeing like, whoa, the draining the strategic reserve in order to bring down gas prices right before an election is a really unsafe and bad idea for the country. And you can get kind of in through the back door. And the other idea is incrementalism. I may do a video solely dedicated to this tactic. But think of how the left has gotten Drag Queen Story Hour in. They didn't lead with that back in the 1980s or 1970s. They gradually infiltrated every institution in America, whether it's academia or entertainment or whatever it was, and just slowly turned up the temperature in the pot till it was boiling. And here we find ourselves in hell. So we can take that tactic as well, and that's where you see parents taking over school boards, starting at the grassroots level and incrementally making change. It doesn't just have to be at the presidential level or the House of Representatives or whatever. That would be nice. But there's plenty of vulnerabilities within hierarchical power structures in order to take a position and hold it and deny them that unconditional support that they need to rule. So we may be a long way from where we want to be, but that doesn't mean that it is impossible to get there. And so maybe there needs to be a shift in tactics there on the surface level, but the underlying strategy remains the same.